The purpose of our webinar this morning is to review creative wireless LTE solutions for distance learning. This is, of course, co-hosted by Cradlepoint and RCN Technologies. We've really got a jam-packed presentation today, and we're going to explore how you can creatively solve some common issues that come up when trying to provide distance learning solutions across your school districts, and specifically how Cradlepoint Enterprise Class LTE-enabled routers can achieve that task. I'm Reed Perryman, one of your co-hosts today. I serve as the Director of Public Sector Sales at RCN Technologies. And with me, I've got David Kobe. David, you want to give her an introduction?
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning, everyone. As Reed said, my name is David Kobe. I'm a Channel Solution Architect for the Central Region at Cradlepoint. And I'm here to help partners like RCN make sure that they are ready to go from a technical standpoint to support customers.
Thank you, David. Appreciate that. Before we really dive into the agenda today, just wanted to share briefly a little bit about RCN Technologies. We were founded in 2013 in Knoxville, Tennessee. We're a technology solutions provider, and we've got a lot of expertise in the wireless LTE world. In fact, for our 7 years of existence, that's primarily been what we've done with customers day in, day out. A little bit more about us. We're an Inc. 5000 company as of this year. Also, as of this year, we are a woman-owned small business. We are a Cradlepoint Elite partner and have been so for the past 4 years. Total partnership with Cradlepoint has lasted our entire existence for these 7 years. Ultimately, with RCN, what is our goal? Our goal is that you can expect more from your technology provider. More knowledge, more support, more service, and whatever you really need to take complex technology solutions, simplify those, deploy them out to solve your pain points from wheels up to wheels down. That's who RCN is. Now, David's going to share a little bit about Cradlepoint.
Okay, so Cradlepoint, we are a Boise, Idaho-based company. We are international. We have about 600 or so people around the globe, most of which are in the United States. Since we are a US-based company. Been around a little over 10 years, but recently we were acquired by telecom giant Ericsson. So that's all been in the news and official. So we're a part of that family. And, you know, but we are still Cradlepoint. They want us to run the way we've always run. But a little bit about us from a technology standpoint is that we have our roots in LTE. Started off making routers that used carrier USB 3G modems back in the day. And then we moved into started using our own embedded LTE modems so that you were not subject to just using the devices the carriers gave you and use it as an adjunct to our routers. So we were the first ones to kind of go to market with an embedded LTE modem of our own that supported all the US carriers. And from there, we've just progressed with we're always the first to market with, you know, the next speed. You know, as you can see here, the 300 megabit per second modems with our Cat 6 modem back in the day. The 600 megabit modems, which are, you know, still available in our products today. Of course, the first two, the in excess of gigabit over LTE were available by the carrier. And then, of course, we already have a 5G adapter, the W2000 series. Available in Australia only because they're, as of right now, the only ones who have got 5G rolled out pervasively around the country. But we are looking at about a Q1 of 2021 ready to go for whatever the carriers want to throw at us for 5G.
Thank you, David. So now that our introductions are out of the way, let's jump into the heat of things, right? Let's review the agenda. What we hope to accomplish today. First, we'll identify common challenges with distance learning in school districts. We will introduce technology that can creatively solve those challenges. We will discuss, after we've learned, what we can do next, how we can get these solutions in hand and start proactively solving these issues with that hardware deployment. Talk a little bit about the giveaways that we have for today's webinar, as well as the discounts that we are offering for applicable solutions that we hear about today. Lastly, we will wrap up with a Q&A that will be primarily chat-based. You see in the webinar hub there, see a little Q&A section there. Go ahead and click that, and we will hold all questions to the end. If you think of something in the middle of our presentation, go ahead and hit that in the chat. When we get to the Q&A section, we'll make sure to tee that up and get you a good answer. Now, as we cover all this ground today in our agenda, what we're hoping you're going to learn is about technology, then it truly enables distance learning from anywhere. We're going to learn how this technology can simplify and reduce costs for managing and securing devices, regardless of the location. We're going to learn a little bit how to simplify the procurement and deployment process for these solutions, how we can avoid the common pitfalls and the cons, so to speak, with consumer level hotspot deployments, and ultimately how we can decrease the digital divide. Plus, we'll have a little CARES Act info as it pertains to these solutions you'll hear about today as well. That being said, let's jump into the heart of the agenda. First things first, what are some of those challenges that are very common to a lot of IT directors across school districts in America that are currently trying to support distance learning networks so students are not severely impacted? As we were putting this presentation together, polling our current customers, and just really putting feelers out there in the channel, this is what we primarily heard back. First and foremost, inequality of internet access, right? Wire lines can't run everywhere, and even so, not every family can afford that wireline service. So that inherently, from an infrastructure standpoint, creates a problem for distance learning. Now, even if you get endpoints out into the field to provide connectivity, that introduces a whole new host of challenges. Big one being asset and network management, right? Being able to consolidate the time you spend doing network configuration changes, updating firmware, or generally just keeping up with those assets. Another one is device reliability. Is it a rugged device? Is it going to withstand the wear and tear of either the road, a pop-up network environment, or that student's home or their backpack? Some of these solutions can be complex, right? Depends on what security protocols might be, what the different GUIs might look like, how each different piece of technology is managed and configured and deployed. And that can be a real issue, especially with limited IT staff in most school districts. And lastly, big checkbox here, CIPA compliance. It's very necessary. That mandate from the Fed, we want to take that very seriously. And not every solution has a viable pathway to achieve CIPA compliance. Now let's dive more into some of the solutions, right? We heard about our problems: internet access equality, asset network management, reliability, complexity, CIPA compliance. Those are our core issues. Now let's dive into some hardware overviews of how we can proactively solve these with some Cradlepoint endpoints. Categorically, we have two different types of solutions here. One is at home or fixed location with the Cradlepoint IBR 600C or the Cradlepoint E100 device, or we have a mobile or a moving location-based solution in the Cradlepoint IBR 1700. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to you, David, to present a number of the Cradlepoint endpoints.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to start today with the a subset of the learn from home or learn from anywhere type solution. These are routers that one is one we've had around for a while. That's the IBR 600C. It was this has been adapted from an IoT application to a ruggedized home use type device, and then we have the E100, which is relatively new. It's being sold as our work from home, learn from home, or work from anywhere, learn from anywhere solution. Okay, and there's some similarities between these two, and there's some differences between the two, and it really comes down to what you feel is going to be the best solution for the application. Okay, so they're each going to provide day one connectivity. All right, so they both are going to have a Cat4 modem with theoretical download speeds over cellular of 150 meg per second. Obviously, that's also very carrier dependent, and will work with any of the major U.S. carriers. The IBR 600C roughly supports 5 simultaneous users, but depending on what those users are going to do, like any other router, and the speed available to you is going to vary. Okay, It's definitely rugged, very portable. It's about 4 inches square, about a little over an inch tall, as you can see with the dimensions there from the top to the bottom. It's designed to take a little bit of a beating. Okay, it'll handle temperature extremes. Again, this was something that was ported over from the, can be sitting in a kiosk outside. Okay, for that type of application. But we all know children will do things with devices that they shouldn't necessarily do. They get things spilled on them, touched with dirty, muddy hands. Things dropped them, and they themselves get dropped. Okay, so this is this is a device that's designed to take a little bit of a beating. Okay, from a management standpoint, all of our products are going to have the NetCloud Manager with them in a 1, 3, or 5 year option. So, and that also includes support. So you're not going to be left out in the cold. You have a great partner like RCN to help support you as that first call if there's an issue. But they also have Cradlepoint behind them with every product. Okay, so NetCloud Manager is going to make it very easy, regardless of which device or devices you choose or the customer chooses. It's going to make it easier for them to manage, deploy, and make changes to. Okay, and we will be doing a demo of that and how easy it is later on in this presentation. So you'll get to see that, not just hear me say how great it is. You'll also be with this device. It has a passive GPS, so it's going to be able to do a little bit of geofencing, and NetCloud Manager is going to show you where that geofence is, allow you to set that up, and then of course send out alerts to necessary people, IT managers, what have you, to tell them if that device has left that geofence. As we know, these can be moved, so we want to make sure that they are being watched. Okay, and then of course we do have some software-defined security. Each one of these devices is going to have a pathway to be CIPA compliant, whether it be our own native CP secure web filter, which is not available for this product, but it is in the next one, or you leverage something like Zscaler, which is available through us, or if you already have a Zscaler subscription, that's okay. This will work with that. You can get to your CIPA compliance that way. We also support Umbrella and a couple others, proxy type services to make sure that you're protecting the children from things they should not see and or hear or get themselves in trouble with. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. The E100, as I mentioned, is a small office, home office branch router versus a mobility router. So you're going to get a little more feature set as far as the security goes natively. You can still use things like Zscaler, but you can also use our own native web route, which is very easy to configure for CIPA compliance. It's right in the configuration if you take the advanced package. This device, while it sports the same modem, is going to support a few additional users because its throughput is LAN-to-WAN throughput is going to be a little higher. So it's capable of supporting some additional users, again, based on what they're doing. If you've got multiple children from the same school, you can put this router in and they can all connect to it versus the other one being really more of a one-to-one type solution. This one is not going to be as rugged though, because it is meant to be in a relatively fixed position. It's small, but again, not necessarily meant to be, thrown in a backpack and towed it off to grandma's house. Okay, to learn from there. So, but again, you still do have the same software-defined security available to you and some. Okay, and then of course it's got some additional Ethernet ports. Where if you look at the IBR 600C, it had two, a WAN and a LAN port. Now they're both software-defined, so you could turn that WAN port into a LAN port and get two LAN ports out of it. But this, if you need additional wired ports, this has 4. It also has dual band Wi-Fi. The other one only had 2.4 gigahertz. This has 2.4 and 5, so it's a little more robust from its throughput standpoint on the LAN, as well as the number of devices. If you have newer devices that may not support 2.4, though I can't think of any, you want to go with 5, it's available to you. And then, of course, you also have a little more in-depth visibility into not in the analytics through NCM, which is not going to just show you how much data was used and by which device, but it's going to show you how much data was used by which device and what they did with it. So you have a little more insight on this type of box with who's doing what, where, and when. Okay, and we can kind of show that as well when we go into the demo. And then the next slide, please. Okay, so this is an interesting solution to a challenge that's been around for a while. For a lot of schools that have students from underserved areas where they either don't have internet or the internet that is available is not going to be sufficient to provide them with the bandwidth that they need to do video conferencing, Zoom, Teams, whatever they're using, or the families just flat out can't afford it. An interesting solution got done a few years ago using this device's predecessor, and it's a big school. It was at the time, I think, one of the poorest ones in the nation, Coachella Valley. And what they did was they took an IBR unit, mobility unit, which is designed to be hardwired into the vehicle electrical system, and they parked the buses in various locations around these neighborhoods to provide Wi-Fi to these children's home off of a cellular network. They've essentially turned the bus into a big moving hotspot. Now, the newer product here, which you see here, is the IBR 1700. Is a very rugged device. It's about 2.5 times the size and weight of an IBR 600C. Its capability to support 100 students, especially if you do the dual modem, which it is capable of doing. You know, hedge your bets, use 2 different carriers. Can support that. So you wire this into the bus. Now, obviously, in the age of COVID-19, where everybody's at home virtually 100% of the time. I know my child just, her school just went back. They were in school for a little while, about a month or so, and then they just went back to 100% due to the increase in cases of COVID here in Illinois. This is becoming more pervasive. This is becoming a very popular solution now with having to park a bus in a neighborhood that needs this, or where the children and the families need this. That's going to be a battery drain. So what a lot of customers have taken to doing is taking a few deep cycle marine batteries and adapting them to power these devices 24/7, rather than running them off the school bus battery and potentially draining it in about 18 hours or less. So very creative solutions, but it works very, very well. Now take this 300-foot range of the dual band Wi-Fi with a grain of salt. Whenever I am asked the question of what is the range of the Wi-Fi, my answer is always, it depends. So you have to keep in mind, how high is the device being mounted? Now, obviously, in this type of solution, you would use external antennas. Okay, so that puts it on top of the bus already, giving it a little height. But what's in the way? Houses. What is the construct of those houses? Trees, cars, you name it. Everything that's put in the way is going to decrease that range. So you have to be very strategic in where you park these buses. Okay. Then, of course, you do have an active GPS off of this. So even if you weren't using the bus as a hotspot, this is a great solution for schools that are required to provide Wi-Fi on the school buses. I know there's a few states that do that because they're in a rural area. Students have a very long bus ride home, and they like to use it to get some homework done on their school-issued Chromebook or laptop. So it can also, the GPS can be used to provide, when you couple it with an AVL solution from a third party, you can do, turn-by-turn directions for the school bus driver, historical routes, I think also vehicle analytics, off the GPIO, or the ODM2 port. It gets very robust and very complete very quickly. So you can do a lot with this versus just providing Wi-Fi. All right. And then, of course, the CIPA compliance pathway, using the advanced NetCloud with our own web routes, web filter, and then, of course, Zscaler, Umbrella, OpenDNS, what have you. You already have those subscriptions. One other thing to note about CIPA compliance, another way to accomplish this with any of these devices is, if you want to have all the data go back to the school's head end, say you've got a big firewall there at the high school, for example, that can provide all the CIPA compliances with the filters there. You can set up VPN tunnels off of each of these devices to go back to the head end. Not the most, efficient of solutions, but definitely doable if you want to set that up where the router automatically stands up a VPN tunnel when it turns on, goes back to the head end, and the head end will apply the CIPA compliance filters based off of that. So, next slide, please. Okay, so which one makes sense? All right. You're really not going to go wrong with any of these. It just really depends on what the solution is, and you know, the dynamics of the household. In other words, how many children, the size of the house, how many children are in that, or you know, students at a given school. So, and then typically you have to take in mind what's going to be the requirement for what the child is doing. Okay, a Zoom group video in HD, you're looking at minimum to have any sort of quality there, about 1.5 meg per second. Now, keep in mind, a lot of this is also going to be carrier dependent, so you have to make sure you select the right carrier or carriers. Okay, but keeping that in mind, in that scenario, in any of these first four scenarios, you're not going to go wrong with any of these. It's just a matter of how many wired versus wireless, and how many students are going to be needing to do this simultaneously in the home. Okay. If you've got 3 users or devices using basic functions with high def video conferencing, you're looking at something to provide a 12 to 25 megabit per second throughput to all 3. Roughly, you're going to need something like the E100. So this is kind of a guide to on which one you should deploy. Also, from a costing perspective, if you've got 3 children in the home that go to the same school, 3 IBR 600s may not necessarily be as cost effective as a single E100. Okay. Next. Okay. So hotspots. We run into this all the time. Hotspots have some inherent flaws. Okay. One is they are not going to, from a software or physical standpoint, going to be as secure as something like a Cradlepoint. They are not going to be easily managed either. Okay. If there are any centralized management portals, they're third party, and you're going to pay a premium for them. Okay. Versus every Cradlepoint router comes with that subscription to NetCloud Manager, and it is very, as you will see here in the presentation here, it is a very robust platform and is going to far exceed anything you're going to get from these third parties that can manage hotspots. Hotspots are very consumer grade. They're very small. They walk away. They get sold on eBay. So as you can see from a physical standpoint, not secure. Okay. So you have to ask yourself, is one of the things that's important to me easily managing these devices, not just for who has them and where they are, but also configuring them, important to you? And then, of course, being able to quickly and easily apply a security policy to all or a group of the routers, important. If it is, proceed on to Cradlepoint. Look no further at your hotspots. Okay. If your primary purchase criteria is price over ease of management and security, now continue on down the hotspot path. But you will find that if you've got more than, I'm going to say 5 to 10 hotspots, it's going to get very clunky very quickly. Okay. Next slide, please. All right. So here's a real quick chart to kind of make a determination. IBR 600C with the Soho package and the E100 with the Soho package of consumer hotspots. Okay. Obviously, with the Cradlepoint products, you're going to have that NetCloud Manager. You're going to have the warranty, limited lifetime, as long as you keep the subscription. You've got 24/7 support. You can go through a great partner like RCN for that first stop support, or even the customer themselves is allowed to call in. Okay. You get health and modem data usage. You've got a security dashboard to show you what kind of applications have been used, policy violations, anything like that. You have a software-defined perimeter, which can further act as a policy-based firewall. You have IPsec VPN, which is another way, again, to give the student, not just give the students access to any applications at the school's head end or data center, but also to be able to provide your own CIPA compliance layers using the school's head-end firewall if you want to just VPN everything back. Okay, DM VPN, hub and spoke. Not to bore anybody with the technical details. That's a very robust, failure-resistant hub and spoke type network. And then, of course, the pathway to CIPA compliance. Okay, one of the things the E100 is going to offer, as I mentioned, above the 600C, is its own native CIPA compliant web filter, intrusion detection, prevention. You're basically turning the device into a UTM. Okay, and then, of course, an application-aware firewall that can automatically apply quality of service settings based on what kind of traffic it's sensing going through it. So if it's got 3 students connected, one of them is trying to do a high-def video call at that time, and the others are just checking emails or working on a little Google Slides assignment, it's going to give priority to the device that's trying to do a video call. Okay, looking all the way over to the right, the consumer hotspots. That's what you got. It's possible to do some CIPA compliance through some wrangling with custom APNs, which again cost money, potential third-party software or proxy services, which again cost an additional premium. And then, of course, your support is going to be fairly minimal. You'll be hard-pressed to find a premium support. And those devices, they are consumer grade. They are not designed to be recycled. Student hits 5th grade and graduates out of grade school and goes off to middle school. They turn that device in. Is that device going to work for the next student who comes up through the ranks and needs one of these things? You just likely not, because again, they're designed to work for about a year to 18 months, and then they just don't. That you start seeing a high rate of failure. Okay. Next, please. All right, software platform. So NetCloud Manager does a lot for you. Okay, you monitor the network performance and data usage and online activity. If a student calls in or their parents call in, going on about a poor quality of connection, the IT administrator can use NetCloud Manager to see the cellular signal strength and determine, hey, where they live, this carrier they have just isn't cutting it. Let's get them a SIM from another carrier. Okay. You can configure all your devices from one location. You don't have to go and individually touch each individual device remotely or locally to make configuration changes or apply policy. Okay. You have GPS breadcrumbing and geofencing for fleet type activities. You can manage those clients. You can apply CIPA compliant filter and content filters en masse. And then, of course, you get your analytics, the usage analytics. Again, depending on the device, that is going to dictate what kind of level of analytics you see. But either way, it gives you some insight as to who's doing what with whom and where. Okay, so there's a lot to it. Okay.
And then, David, one thing that I wanted to add here was just to re-emphasize to our audience today that as you've heard David say over and over and over, there is a clear-cut pathway to CIPA compliance. We all know what that means, right? It's a federal mandate that any internet services provided to students in a learning capacity by a school district must be able to filter out any negative or blacklisted content. And again, like we continue to say, that each Cradlepoint solution that you're learning about today does have a clear-cut pathway to that CIPA compliancy. This is where we are going to spin up a NetCloud demo. So David, this is where you're going to take the reins here.
Yes, sir.
Presenter, and see, I believe I probably need to stop sharing my screen. So we'll get to that.
Actually, I think I got it.
Perfect. Take it away.
Okay. Are you able to see my NetCloud?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm going to assume everybody else can too. If they can't, I guess raise your hand. So NetCloud Manager, as I mentioned, is a cloud-based. It's hosted in the US in AWS. You can use any browser to access it. We do support multi-factor authentication, so you get that little extra added bit of security. I'm already logged into mine, as you can see here. I'm using Firefox, You know, there's people who love it, they hate it, whatever. You can use Chrome, you can use Microsoft Edge, you can use Safari, whatever you like. It's a browser that you just point at the cradlepointecm.com and go. Okay. At first glance, when you log in, you'll be greeted with this list of routers. Okay. You can sort this by name, description. There's some fields that are customizable here. You hover over them, you'll get a little, icon of a pencil, which means that field is customizable. Okay. You sort by the NetCloud OS, which is the operating system revision or level that it's on, MAC address, serial number, product type, whatever you wish. At the end of the day, if you see the little green circle, the white check mark in it, that's a good thing. The device is online. Okay. If you see it with a red with an exclamation point, it's not. Either the SIM got deactivated, the device got unplugged, the carrier's down in that area, any number of issues. That means you're going to have to probably physically go there or walk somebody through over the phone to try and correct whatever needs to be corrected. Okay. From here, configuring a Cradlepoint device, one of two ways. You can touch each individual one, or you can use a very powerful tool we have called Groups, which is right here. And these groups allow you to make a cookie cutter configuration. And by cookie cutter, I mean there are certain settings in every router in your network that you're distributing to these students that are going to be the same. The CIPA compliance filters, possibly the Wi-Fi SSID, okay? Maybe even the Wi-Fi SSID radio transmit settings, okay? The local GUI admin password, things like that, okay? You could even leave the LAN IP addresses the same unless you're going to do VPN tunnels, in which case you configure your cookie cutter configs and then go, and you'd have to touch each individual router and give it its own LAN IP, okay? Also, from a security standpoint, if you only want school devices to be able to access this router, you might have to do some MAC address whitelisting or blacklisting, which these are capable of, and which means you'd have to touch each individual one, okay? But from it's still going to be a lot easier and faster for certain things that every router's got to have to use the groups, okay? And it's very simple. I'm going to use an IBR 600C because that's I don't have a 100 here. It's very simple. You hit add, and we're going to use school. And the product, it is by product, so you can't have mixed bag of product models in a single group. So if you use an IBR 600Cs, you got to have a group with only IBR 600Cs, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and put in the IBR 600C, okay? And I can even do different revs of software. This is great because it allows you to sandbox firmware, okay? When new firmware comes out, we all know the best thing for your router is the latest and greatest firmware. For our purposes, we're going to go ahead and use the latest one, okay? I'm going to hit OK. And then what I want to do is now I'm going to go in and I'm going to make my config changes. I choose that group, edit, and I know that I want Wi-Fi settings, call it school, name, school 2020, unmask that password so I can see what it is. I can choose a different security modes depending on what you're using. I can select minimum bit rates before it drops the Wi-Fi connection. Hit save. Best practices, hit every single save button you see. And then for security, let's say I'm going to do Zscaler Internet Security. I don't have my login, so I'm not going to bother with that right now. Save. Commit changes. Okay. And then now it's as simple as going back to my devices, choosing my IBR 600C, or in a school's case, maybe 100 IBR 600Cs. Either way, tick mark them all, and then go to move. And I'm going to move it into that group. And it's done. Now, every single one of those IBR 600Cs that gets moved into that group is going to get that configuration setting or settings. Now you can go back and massage anything you need to do for, you're going to do MAC address, whitelisting, blacklisting, VPN settings, whatever other little tweaks you have to do. This just made life really easy. So in the case of your CIPA compliant filters, I'm going to take something that's got a little more robust of a, let's go back to groups, go here, edit. So that I figured this would be important, cloud-based security. And this one, we have the advanced package. So we automatically get the CP Secure Web Filter, and I can apply it to any one of these networks or all of them, okay? So in the case of an IoT network, I can go through and here's my filters, but there's also a profile, which is really cool. CIPA compliant, it's already there, it's built for you. And once you apply that, you can then go in and tweak that particular filter to your liking. So CIPA compliance by default, I think, blocks streaming media. But let's say you're using YouTube. Let's say you're using a private little YouTube thing. I know my daughter's school does for their gym class. They're supposed to go online and check in and do one of 10 warm-ups and one of 20 workouts every day for their online gym class they do by themselves. Well, if I have in my CIPA compliance filters streaming media blocked, they're not going to get there. So I can go and I can add a custom category. And by default, once I put in YouTube right here, it'll be unblocked. It'll be allowed in any one of these categories, okay? But this is also good if you find one that's actually skirting around the filter, you can go add it and then block it, okay? So it is flexible. And if you find it, the cool part about this is because it's powered by WebRoot, which is an industry leader in this, among other things. If you find one that's not in here, you can notify them. They'll look at it and then they'll add it to the filter. So this is not necessarily a proxy-based tool like a Zscaler. It's the database is held by WebRoot, but it pushes to the routers. Okay, and then so basically the processor does, or the processor and the router makes that decision. Okay, so kind of a hybrid model versus a Zscaler, an umbrella, or something like that, but it works very, very well. Okay, so once you've configured that, again, you hit every single save button, you hit commit changes, and boom, those configuration changes are there. Okay, so it's very easy. Now let's talk a little bit about usage here. We wanted to make sure that people aren't doing what they're not supposed to be doing. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to take a look at this device right here. If we click on its name, it'll take us to another dashboard, and it give us a nice little real quick window into how much usage over the past 7 days. And I can, of course, do a custom range if I wish, or go the last 15 days. Tells me how much. Now this is an Ethernet wireline connection, and then I can go ahead. I can either click there, and it will tell me on each day how much data was used. Now, if I want to really drill down, I can go to clients. Now this is not something you'll see clients on the 600C, but you won't see traffic. Okay, this will tell me the number of clients and which client is the guilty party. How much was this doing? Okay, so we've got a couple Roku sticks here. This is how much data they used. And we've got a laptop here that's done a few things. You've got an Amazon device here, a Ring doorbell. And what the E100 is going to provide for you now is the ability to then drill down into traffic to kind of give you an idea of the categories of the services that used the data. So you've got media streaming services, network protocols, and that could be anything. We're still continuing to evolve this so we can get more and more detailed. But if you see here, the last 7 days, that's about right. Here's the streaming services that were used: CBS All Access, Hulu, Netflix. Those are the ones. Okay, so you get a really nice idea of, hey, Hulu was used 2.7 gig of my LTE data. Now this is an Ethernet connection, But if it's an LTE, because it is metered, you want to be uber careful about that. Okay. So you have some insight to what you're doing, which can then prompt you to take further measures to lock things down or open them up if necessary. Okay. Okay. Did I cover that well?
Absolutely, David. Thank you for doing that.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm going to pass the ball back to you.
Excellent. I'll get our presentation back up. But really appreciate that, David. So now that we've talked about a number of the actual individual hardware endpoint solutions, where we want to take this to now is where RCN's expertise in this corner of the industry with the Cradlepoint product line help simplify that procurement, management, and deployment process. So just in review, you might already have your gears turning about how some of these endpoints can solve our pain points. Those again being internet access inequality, asset and network management. NetCloud is going to be huge for that. Reliability, in terms of the rugged ability of the device and general throughput that each device offers in each scenario. Complexity being simplified through the NetCloud Manager, and also CIPA compliance, each endpoint having that clear defined pathway either through Zscaler or Webroot integrated secure filtering. As you saw in the NetCloud Manager demo, all those are very easily spun up and applied at a group level. So no matter if you have one device or multiple, it's going to be a very great solution that's very simple. So what you see here on this slide are some all-in-one solutions. Basically what RCN has done is we've taken those hardware endpoints, integrated them into a single line item solution kits. So basically all nuts and bolts of sometimes 5 to 10 piece solutions are all consolidated for that simple deployment process, that simple procurement process. So we'll go through these very quickly. First and foremost, you heard about this type solution with the IBR 1700. You'll see up there in the upper right-hand corner, there's an IBR 1700 endpoint. As a reminder, reasonably up to 100 clients can concurrently connect to this at one time. You also see a dome there. That is a high-gain external antenna, typically bolted to the roof of a bus. Not only is it going to that pull-in signal for bandwidth, but it's also going to broadcast the Wi-Fi out. What are districts using this for? What's the utility? First and foremost, during our COVID pandemic era right now, a lot of school districts are getting these to strategically park those buses in underserved communities, communities that either can't afford wireline services or communities where wireline services generally aren't available. Turns it into a great hub or center, a mega hotspot, if you will, for people to come up, students to connect to secure, reliable, and filtered internet. And then from a post-COVID standpoint, of course, think about an extended study hall or classroom for any bus riders. They can do homework on their commutes home. Students or student athletes can do their homework to and from games, et cetera, et cetera. And then lastly, you can roll these up into your county's emergency preparation disaster response plan. That's our rolling Wi-Fi center kit. Next up is a customer favorite. This is the pop-up network kit. This is a solution that RCN has engineered from the ground up. So the best way to liken this to is a Pelican case, or if you've ever had a ruggedized plastic projector case that you've used in the past. This is a good way to think about this solution. You'll see in the upper right-hand corner there, basically what's integrated is a high gain antenna. You get as well, you get in that little carrying pouch, you'll see a car adapter on the left-hand side and an AC adapter there on the right-hand side. There's an external power port, so you can always have these powered on. Under the hood, there's an integrated battery for a 10 to 12 hour battery life, depending on usage. And there, of course, you see a Cradlepoint endpoint. This is actually the IBR 900. Think of this as little brother to the 1700, bigger brother to the IBR 600. It's more feature rich in line with that 1700 in terms of location services and also analytics, also with the Webroot integrated filtering. But it's a great endpoint that reasonably connects 10 to 15 users at any given time. The pandemic utility is obviously you're going to be able to get a truly pop-up network that's deployable anywhere. A lot of our customers have been deploying these out at community centers for some drive-up or walk-up Wi-Fi. And then obviously in a post-COVID utility sense, you're going to be able to use these to deploy on any number of buses for school trips or athletic trips, support pop-up events on and off campus, emergency preparedness, disaster relief, as we mentioned for that rolling Wi-Fi kit, and then also a popular use case supporting sports broadcasting either down there on the field or up in the press box. This is our public hotspot kit. You'll see in the upper right-hand corner, again, this is an IBR 1700 based solution. We also provide a secure, weatherproof NEMA enclosure in addition to an optional solar panel or a direct wire harness to a light pole. The idea here is to utilize as existing infrastructure, typically a parking lot, or that might be at the school, at a public library, or maybe there's a partnership with the city or county parks and rec. Install this NEMA enclosure up on a light pole to increase the amount of signal you're able to receive and Wi-Fi you're able to broadcast out. But it truly allows for a drive up or walk up internet access that's more of a fixed location than our pop-up network kit. It utilizes that existing infrastructure there. You get a solar power option, you get a direct hardwire option. There's even a harness that can hook into a photo cell, which is that little antenna you might have noticed looking at light poles. Sometimes it sits at the very top on top of the light. But a great option, very popular in higher ed right now as well for their commuters. Moving on, this is perhaps the most simple solution kit. Effectively, it's just an E100 or an IBR 600 device. What's included is not only NetCloud Manager, but an advanced version there on the E100, also 600, and then also you're going to get a Zscaler license on that 600 to enable the CIPA compliant filtering service. What's great about this is we can also ship with a SIM card that's already installed of your flavor. All you need to do is deliver the device ID and the SIM card number to your carrier of choice to get that activated. And we're including dedicated week one support from our RCN technical team. Want to make sure that you can get that configuration spun up, get these deployed out to your students in a timely manner after you purchase and receive these. Lastly, just from a service standpoint, we've talked about the endpoints. We've talked about how these endpoints come together for different environmental type solutions. And so really, what's the aim, right? Procurement made easy, simplifying that procurement process. Provisioning done right, making sure that not only that SIM is kitted properly, but also these devices are configured properly and are field ready for deployment when you receive them. How do we do that? On the left-hand side, you see some white glove services there, everything from pre and post sales engineering, installation capabilities, management contracts, kitting and asset tagging. We've got a dedicated help desk as well. At the end of the day, what is our promise? Your tech will work, and over 281 to be exact, school districts to date have worked with us to deploy these type of solutions and have found great success enabling distance learning. Now, to bring us down on the home stretch here, the last thing I wanted to mention about all of our solutions today is that they are all eligible for CARES Act funding. So everything from the individual endpoints, the 600, the E100, the IBR 1700, and all of the RCN kit solutions that you saw, you can apply CARES dollars towards procuring and deploying those. The deadline, of course, is December 30th, so here in the next 40 days or so. And according to the U.S. Department of Treasury, as of August 12th, 94% of states out there spent less than 50% of their allocated funds. The dollars are there, they're available. There's no telling if that deadline is going to be extended. So we're kind of at a critical window, especially with COVID cases spiking and looking like most schools might go to virtual only here soon, heading into the holiday season and next semester. So now that we've reviewed all this information, we've discovered how Cradlepoint endpoints and some of these kit solutions can solve those pain points. Again, those being internet access inequality, asset and network management, reliability, simplifying complexity, and CIPA compliance. Now that we've learned all about this, what can we do with this information? What is the call to action, the next steps? Well, RCN is offering a free consultation to each webinar attendee on today's show. So you can either call the number there and ask for me. My contact information is over there on the right-hand side. We're also going to have a post-webinar registration link where you can sign up for a consultation as well. What we'll do during that is we'll discuss your goals and needs, define your pain points. we will put a plan or a proof of concept together. And if need be, we can work on getting a personalized demo out in your hands to do a little bit of field testing there to make sure that these solutions are going to be absolutely perfect for your school district and work as we've said they'll work today. So now we're going to move into the Q&A home stretch here. So as I said earlier, we are going to focus on a chat-based Q&A. So on your left-hand side of your screen in the webinar software, you should see a Q&A box. Go ahead and hit that. It's going to pop open the chat window. So whatever questions you might have, go ahead and input them there, and we will do our best to get you a qualified answer. Just going to give a few minutes for some chats to come in. Okay, I'm seeing one question right now. The question is, can you remind me how many concurrent clients can connect to that IBR 1700 solution? And can you give me any examples of school districts using that solution successfully today? The answer is absolutely yes. Can do both of those for you. In terms of client count, as a general rule of thumb, the IBR 1700 can connect up to 100 clients concurrently. Obviously, that's max capacity. It's really going to depend on the workload and applications the students are using while connected to that device, but that is the ceiling of 100 concurrent clients. Then to give you a tangible example there, we have partnered with Harlandale Independent School District down in Texas. This is in the San Antonio metro area. Earlier this year, they purchased about 60 IBR 1700 devices, deployed those very successfully in the school buses, and right now they're enjoying a program where they park those strategically across their school district. So not only during weeknights, but also during weekends, students have equitable access to internet connectivity. One of the things they really like about it is the CIPA compliant filtering, also the NetCloud. They're able to make any configuration or firmware updates on the fly. And also they're able to keep track of those bus assets as an added fruit of having those IBR 1700s in there. It's a great question.
Another one to note would also be, we did South Bend schools.
We got a question actually about the pop-up network kit. This was the ruggedized case solution that you saw earlier. It's one of RCN's kitted solutions. So the question is, what was the battery life on that kit solution, and how many clients can you reasonably expect to connect at one time? Again, a great question there. Answer is our battery life on that kit is typically 10 to 12 hours. It scales down from there depending on how heavy it is used during the time that it's on. One thing I'd like to point out about it that I didn't mention earlier is that it also has an external facing network port in addition to a power button. The lid on the case does not need to be open for the device to function properly. In fact, you could even put a padlock on it if you're afraid security is an issue. And in terms of client count, really the sweet spot's going to be down there similar to the IBR 600, around 5. Reasonably get away with 10 on the top end, 15 you're pushing it a little bit, but a great thing is the IBR 900, it's got a little bit more feature rich than that 600 in terms of those layer 7 analytics and the integrated web route filtering versus having to get the third-party Zscaler license. So overall, great solution. I mentioned that it's very popular with our school districts today, primarily deploying them at community centers, whether that's at a park or whether it's just a general community center, public library, etc. That's where they're mainly using those today.